There we go. So what's your experience been when you've been working with young people over the last few years? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What are their hungers? What's keeping them away? Yes.
Self-identity and socially fit. They're seeking for that affirmation from the society, pressure from expectations, and social media also a great impact.
Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I think a lot of them are like they're still growing, so they're in their pivotal moments of like trying to figure out who they are. So a lot of them are also trying to adapt in a classroom environment with other students with different personalities. So it's just like adapting and like not knowing how to adapt sometimes to like different personalities or like louder, like compatibility with just classmates in general too.
Yeah, it's like me versus Amy. It's like
Yeah. Or it's like the
turns that quiet guy in the corner, Amy's out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so the task of adolescents, right, is to discover who am I, and they're going through that, but they're going through that in a way that we never went through, because their environment is an environment that we never experienced. You know, I was in high school in the early '70s. That world looked nothing like this, right? And I lived in this tiny little isolated town in Massachusetts on the water. And, you know, it was really idyllic. Those of you who know Dunstasio, we always wanted to hear stories because there were pictures in our house about my little idyllic town in New England. But man, that's not there. And you know, the social media, as you said, it's everywhere, and it's good and it's bad. And it's easy to fall into like that. Any other things you've experienced when young people the last couple of years?
I think relatability. So one thing I noticed with especially our post-confirmation and young adults, that they want to be able to serve at church, but they also still want like they want, you know, high-paying jobs. They still want to do
Me
all
too.
the things. Yeah.
I think I got that one
And I
right.
think they're looking for, you know, people in the community that encompasses that, where like you're not just working for the church, you're not just, you know, not to knock at anybody, but like not just family life or whatever. They're looking for some fulfillment where it's like everything. So I think they're
Yeah,
demanding a
learn
little bit
soon
higher.
enough.
Yeah.
You can't have it all. But yeah, and so it's that whole driver perspective. Anything else?
They're just searching, in my opinion. They're just searching.
Yep.
Searching for everything in life, searching in faith, searching everything.
And again, you know, they are, as we all are now today, bombarded with all kinds of information, trying to process that into what's truth, what's not truth, you know, hunkering down into small groupings that simply affirm what you think, so that you're not getting that sense of, well, yeah, there are different ways to look at this. So all of that, again, it's going all through adulthood. So that's, I think, really challenging for us. So, number 1 of 10. If we're not incarnational, then we're nowhere, right? So the starting point is always Jesus. What is twofold? How am I, as the ministry leader, as the catechist, what's my relationship with Jesus, right? Because if we're working with young people, we need to be authentic. And if we're not working on this for us, it's hard to get them working on that for them. So part of that is simply self-reflection. And if you're like me and the rest of the world, like, you know, kind of like this sometimes, right? So like Mother Teresa, right? It was like, shh, but I'm gonna hang on, right? So first it's incarnation, and it's incarnation because the model that Jesus set for us was in relationship. The key passage that's been used forever and ever and ever is the journey to Emmaus. But Jesus simply walks alongside them, listens to their stories. He doesn't try to preach to them. He doesn't try to say, you know who I am? Right? He listens and he walks. And so that's a key piece of successful youth ministry. One of the challenges for us, this is being recorded, I don't get in trouble for this, but I'm close to retirement. It's not a bad thing, but it's a balance thing. Because we are so, in this diocese, heavily catechetical, and for a variety of reasons.
I found this on the web.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Siri. Sometimes we're working so hard to get that stuff, the curriculum framework, all of that stuff in, that we're missing the piece of, I don't even have time to walk with these kids. I don't have time to pray with these kids. I got to get all this other stuff in. So again, it's a matter of balance. So incarnational youth ministry, you encounter Jesus in them, and they encounter Jesus in you. And I think is the absolute most important thing to remember. I'm not bringing Jesus to anybody. Jesus is there. I can help them to experience that, to understand that, but I don't give anybody Jesus. Well, unless I'm a Christian minister, then we do. Right? But it's that sense that was one of the things that Pope Francis talks about in Christus Vivit. I walk on holy ground. Their ground is holy. It's messy, but it's holy, right? And to always have that at the forefront. Our task is not, I need to fix it. Our task is, that wasn't Jesus' task, right? Jesus' task is, let me show you the way. You can choose to follow me or not. And that's the scary part for us, right? It's like, but I define success by, they all said yes. And that's not going to always be the case. So incarnational puts Jesus in our life first and in their life first. And we journey with them. Consistency. It's an easy one. Whatever you are doing, whether it's catechesis or other ongoing parts of youth ministry, you want to have a consistent schedule so that the kid who's involved in band and involved in theater and wherever, they know that when they're finished with their stuff, on Wednesday night, 3 months from now, I'm going to show up and you're going to be there for me. That's the importance of consistency. They won't be consistent, but we need to be consistently available. Make sense? Any questions? Youth empowerment. The sense of moving, if one is there, not necessarily everyone is there, from young people or passive recipients who I'm giving something to, who I'm teaching something about, to active engagement into the life and mission of the church. And that's a whole different ballgame. Okay? So we like to talk. We think we know lots of things. I like to think I know a lot of things. But they want to experience. They're visual learners, they're experiential learners. And so the more we talk, the less will be retained. Which is kind of scary because certainly, again, my generation, we just grew up on lectures. It's all you saw in college, it's all you saw in high school, right? But the visual learner and the experiential learner learns differently and needs to engage in the concept. So it really brings about a whole different sense of creativity and helping them. And this is the beauty of it. When we go down this road, we empower them to choose their own path. And that's really challenging, depending on the size of your program. Because one size, and that's the next slide, one size doesn't fit all. It's like, who is this young person? This is for those of you who are doing confirmation, this is the interview in confirmation. Who are you, where are you now, and where do you want to go? And how do you want to get there? And those journeys can look very different. You know, there are kids who love reading scripture and doing all that kind of stuff. And so they're in one place. There are kids who, you know, they're being dragged to church every Sunday, if they're going at all, right? So you have this whole dynamic of, we're gonna try to put everybody in the same box. Now that's convenient, and it makes our life easier. But we empower them by allowing them to have some control over their journey in faith. Okay? Variety is the spice of life. So what I'm getting at here is, many of you had the ancient, now comprehensive youth ministry, 8 components talk, if you ever heard all that. It's still really important and valid. Because again, young people like you and I are drawn to different kinds of experiences. So retreats are great, but some kids hate them. They don't want it. They don't want to feel that vulnerable, right? Socials are great at beginning to mingle and get people and build community. Some people are high introverts and it's like, right? So what are we doing to provide different experiences, maybe service projects here, and social things here, and adoration here, more creative prayer experiences over here, so that we are hoping a whole variety of ways that our young people can encounter the Lord. One of my fears that I talk about all the time is, or one of my beliefs. One of my beliefs is, if our young people leave us and they do not know how to pray in a way that's meaningful to them, not to me, then we've lost them. Unless they have developed a regular pattern of communication with the Almighty. What's to motivate them to start? And so again, that means, again, this is where my fear is, as we've moved over the last 10, 20 years into the beautiful re-emergence of Adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, it's become kind of a fix-all in many places. And frankly, many of our kids really, they're just not there. It's like, silence, what do I do when I'm there? Try to do it with middle schoolers, you're crazy if you're doing that, because they can't still for long enough. So again, beautiful experience for those who are at that point. But what other ways are we praying with other people, teaching them to pray? There's Lectio Divina, there's Visio Divina, there's interactive prayer. And so like a lot of you creative kids, it's like they can pray through doing, not the great criticism in the 70s. All they did was make their felt banners, right? So not necessarily that, but they can create and produce their experience in a visual way of Christ through prayer. So again, that whole sense of very, very variance all the time. You can't hone in on this is the way to do it. Because again, we're all different. My thing, walking through the woods. Or jumping into the ocean. For me, every time I jump into the ocean, it's a profound experience of remembering baptism. And jump up out of that water and look up into the sunny sky in South Florida. That's, that's my experience. That's not somebody else's experience. Oh, he's not, so I don't understand that, right? Or just the majesty of walking through the woods. I think that too is one of those senses that we also have to help people remember that Jesus is not just here. Jesus is not just in the box. He is, and beautifully so. But I said something to someone a couple of weeks ago, and they were frustrated because there wasn't adoration that they could go to during a certain period of time. Now, this person was very careful, daily mass attendant, and so my response was, see all these people in this room, you can see Jesus there. And that wasn't adequate. So we need to blend that sense that, yes, and again, that's the whole thing Father Casey said at OEC. Not only is Jesus here on the altar and in the tabernacle, body, blood, soul, and divinity, but all of that is useless if we're not going out. That was the which is why we did the procession this year, right? It's like, messy as it was, this is what we're trying to teach you. It's not just about a door. Yes, that's important. But if that doesn't transform me into being a living disciple out in the world, then we're missing something. Hop on board. So, this is, again, we briefly alluded to this. Social media, I meant to Google what's, because this stuff changes like every other day. I don't know what the most popular thing is. Instagram still pretty high. Twitter, no, it's going down the tubes. We know Facebook is only adults. Twitter, now X, people have been fleeing that. So what's in?
TikTok, Be Real, and then a few new ones. I work in marketing, so that's how.
Oh, great. So, yeah, I know TikTok. My kids send me TikToks. Don't tell me I've ever seen them. Dad, you're seeing them.
Yeah.
So again, it's that sense of, are we aware and do we enter into that world so we know what it looks like? So I do occasionally, I do have a TikTok. I've never posted on it, but I do wander in to see what's happening in various places that our young people might be encountering. And some of it's really funny, some of it's really scary, some of it's uplifting. It's got everything there. But if we don't walk into that world, we will never understand who that young person is in front of me. Because it's not our experience, for the most part. It might be his experience, but not mine. Right? So again, do the hard work of doing, I don't want to see this stuff. I don't want to go into this world. But you do it for the Lord, right? It's like, I can't help young people experience the Lord if I don't know what's holding them back from this other stuff they're experiencing. So if you feel like you have to go to a confession and have to spend an hour on TikTok, go ahead and do that. But go there. Because that's where Jesus went, Jesus went to the sinners. He went to those who needed the Lord. Was it Pope Francis of the field hospital, right? So again, we need to know how are our young people feeling when you know that depression is at an all-time high, anxiety is at an all-time high. It's just kind of crazy out there. And again, so a lot of that is connected with the need to be perfect on social media, despite the fact that your life is a mess. Or, I was just looking at one of my daughters this morning on her Instagram. And I hate that she does this, but I know who does it. And she's done it to me with pictures she's posted with me. They Photoshop. And so you have this really artificial looking face. Right? You're beautiful, Kate. don't do that. But it was that sense that so many people are falling into that trap of the sense of perfection. And it scares me. I don't really understand it because clearly everybody who sees you on a day-to-day basis knows that's not you. So I'm not quite sure what the benefits are. But as you know, that's what's going on. So again, be connected with, know, and then utilize. How do I use social media effectively in our world of church? There's all kinds of course, caveats there because self-protection was important stuff. So how are you communicating with young people and really with the whole congregation through social media? Again, all us old people, all your parishes are on Facebook, kids will never see it. But, do you have other accounts that are pushing information, prayer, tools, whatever? Are we using this to form them? Any questions so far? Insights, experiences? Okay, this is the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, so systematic is our word. Let's say in my experience, this is really strange because nowhere that I have been, I've been in Archdiocese of Cincinnati, Archdiocese of Miami, and the Archdiocese of Portland, Maine. No place has high school catechesis. Doesn't exist. They gave up on it when they went to youth ministry and never promoted actual catechesis. And so nobody was coming. My first year as youth minister, I was like, well, we need to fix this. That was a fail. It's like I did not prepare them for what we're doing. So there's a lot of good then about that it is, and in that context, I've always worked with our ministers say, you can't just throw stuff out there. What are we going to talk about this week? We want to have some sense of where are we growing these young people to? What do they need to know? And that's the beauty of our curriculum. And the other beauty of the curriculum that Ryan's talking about down the hall, and particularly in high school, is it's not about books. It's about how do I get this concept through in a retreat? How do I get these couple of concepts through in a service project? It's not about the classroom. Some of it is, but it's the very ways in which we can communicate the systematic catechesis and engagement. And so again, engagement, the very. We do our systematic catechesis in high school, preferably, and to some extent, but not as deeply in middle school, in varied ways. Small group stuff. One thing I caution about, because so much isn't out there, anything that becomes routine can become problematic. And so the dynamic, and again, I don't know what these really large parishes can do, because we have some really big parishes here. But if every week, so, okay, we're trucking on in, here's our large group talk, here we're moving into our small group, and this is the same thing every Wednesday, that's monotonous. I mean, there's a lot of good to that technique, to that methodology. But if we want to keep them engaged, so how do we mix that up, and how do we say we're going to cover some of this systematic content in other ways that aren't in 300 people in a room? So again, varied. And it may be that one of the things I'll talk about in the other session, you can do small faith communities with young people, and they can journey on this stuff in different ways, rather than saying, I have to have all 300 people in the same room. So I'm going to have 4 different models for high school formation each year. We're going to have a small group model, we're going to have the big session model, we're gonna have a family model. So again, it's choices, and people can learn and experience the way that is meaningful for them. Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy. Takes a lot of work, a lot of staff with volunteer hours. But I think in the end, it's what serves people best. And the next piece I'm doing is how do we retain folks? Well, we can't retain them, reward them for 13 years. Every study out there says this. The biggest one was a national study on youth and religion about 15 years ago. Bar none, young people who are in families who live their faith are more likely to become lifelong disciples. So again, it's not just, what about these kids in front of us? It's like, where do they come from and how will we impact that? It's not about, also, it's not just about, okay, here are my high schoolers, how do I engage them? And well, I don't want to give half of my next session. but what did I do starting in kindergarten to make sure that this progression worked and was engaging for them? But critically is family. How do we support family? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to stereotype anybody, but I think this is true. Family is pretty strong in the Asian community, is that not true? Like Hispanics. Us, well, I don't know what happened to us. So that's a real plus. So how do we make sure that family is engaged with the young people, but intentionally, that there are two components in family and parent relationship. One is, does the young person see them live their faith at home? So we go to church on Sunday and we're well paid in the butt for the rest of the week, right? Or I just there to go to people, whatever. So is mom and dad walking the walk? That's a key question. And the other is, do they talk the talk? Do they have faith conversations? Again, it's bringing it alive. And those faith conversations are in a open and listening mode. And once we shut them down, we lose them, right? Yeah. So we're gonna, I'll sort of roll out hard one out there. So we're gonna disagree on abortion. Well, let's just continue to talk about that. Why we believe the life of conception, not just you're wrong. You're a sinner. Go to confession, right? But that happens, does it not? Kids who come home pregnant and the parents are like, get out of the house. I have one of those, My son came home right after high school graduation, or just before high school graduation. Dad, we're pregnant. Okay. Dad, take a deep breath. Dad said, I love you, Sean. How can we help? Now he knows that we love him and we will care for this no matter the mistake. Right? And then you have to process all that other stuff. And Jack's a wonderful boy. And he and Anastasia got married a couple of years ago. So some of those work out and some of those don't. But again, it's we had the scary part about that one with my son. My wife teaches religion at a Catholic high school in Dayton. She taught the sexual morality course to his now wife. Awkward. Okay, failed, dear. Teenagers, you love them. So again, always talking about that. We always made a point in our household. You know, when we're watching TV, and Lord knows, there's a whole lot of stuff that on the one hand, at least for me, I don't know, I might be a little weird. Some stuff is like really funny, but then you have to catch yourself and say, so, whatever child, we'll go with Aaron, my father. So Aaron, you know, that was funny, but this is what we believe about that particular circumstance. Again, that intentional dialogue. If you can do anything to help young people, it's to help parents be able to dialogue with their kids. That would be the best takeaway you could have. And hopes the parents would do what we believe. But that's a whole other ballgame. Tried and true retreats are great things. People need to be really careful and well trained when they're doing retreats. Out of the best of intentions, all too often, there turns out to be emotional manipulation activities that they try to utilize. To experience God, to experience Jesus, doesn't mean you have to cry. Some of us just barely do that. Right? But I've been at this long enough, you have retreat teams on occasion like, okay, we didn't succeed. We didn't have enough people crying. No, that's not success. Did they encounter the Lord? That's the question. And so again, they're always well-intentioned, but we have to again recognize the variety of young people in front of us. Some of them respond to the emotional, and we want to be careful that we don't abuse that. But then again, we provide that variety of experiences for them to occur. The other thing I think is important to note when you're doing retreats, and boy, have I seen some battles, that I was directing and learned a whole lot about how to manage retreat teams and review talks ahead of time. Every talk cannot be, I was this massive sinner and I am now saved. Because that's not most people's experience. That is one experience, and it's valid and valuable to have that. But what happens if you have 60 kids on this retreat, and it's like, I don't know about you, but I grew up Catholic. You know, that's just what it was. You know, I didn't have some deep fall from grace. I didn't have, I had to learn to own it. Right? So to provide, in those talks, in those witnesses from young people, experiences that are both profound and normal and everyday, so that we all can see ourselves in that experience. Service. I will say right now that I hate confirmation service projects. But I don't make policy. So, and when I was in Cincinnati, it was discouraged. Just from this perspective, voluntary, meaningful respect. And sometimes it's important that we look at our young people and say, are our adults in this community doing this? And if not, why are you making them do it? I think we should always provide opportunities for service. And again, through a variety of them, most of you young people will engage because they like that. It's you have to have 10 hours and you have to have this form filled out, you have to write this reflection, and That's why I just crammed, just all of your program. But, what is that? Does that transform their lives? Does that make them say, oh, I'm going to serve Jesus? It does not. But if I provide some opportunities and they engage, and I process the experience with them. With my eldest, when she was going through confirmation. And it's really hard having, and my wife was at the time the religious department chair at her school, and I did what I do. And the youth minister, lovely person, good. Most of the youth ministry was good. But it was like, okay, here you serve a challenge. And so then I said to Megan, my eldest, I said, so what are you supposed to do with that? She said, I just have to have the person I did the service for sign the form. And I was like, so she doesn't sit down and sit there and say, so what was your experience like in church? Where did you see Jesus in that? What was difficult? Process that experience. Help them unpack it when you can. So again, I'm all in. Yes?
For the yes, this is the sign, like the sign-in sheet for.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead, pass it around.
Oh,
We can just take a photo and identify him later. Who's that one? So again, have service everywhere. Have family service. But if you don't have to do it, don't say, here are your 10 hours a day to do stuff. It gives them all the reason in the world to say, I don't want to do service. And again, most of them are drawn to it. I mentioned that parish I worked in Coral Gables in the time of Jesus. And one of the things we did in the summer was, again, it was that consistency thing. Whatever day of the week, or every Tuesday, we had a slot for my group, Parish Youth Ministry, at the soup kitchen downtown. And it was just that slot. And every week I'd show up at the parish, some kids would show up, and we'd go down and we'd serve. Never lacked for young people, and there was nothing of them that was required. But man, did they love it once they did it. They start talking to people. And there are some fascinating conversations you can have with some of the folks in Soup Line. All kinds of stories of where they're coming from. And the one I have to say, this might be a little freaky for you, but the one that our kids kind of grasped onto, there was this one guy who was a cross-dresser, and he was just hysterical. But yet just be able to interact and see, well, there is Jesus over here, right? I don't need to be afraid of this. So. And last and first, take care of you or you can't take care of you. It goes back to the first slide about the first part of incarnation work and your relationship with Jesus, but we also are very holistic people. Mental health is important, spiritual health is important, family health is important. Am I doing too much? Is it taking away from my family? Do you have me time? Some of us need more me time than others because we're introverts. I'm good enough, leave me alone. Right? Is that there? When I was working with the Archdiocese of Miami in the youth office, I really was probably pretty hard. I was like, I'm doing all this stuff, and I had retreats all the time, and I'm on national committees, and we're flying off to state meetings, and I'm just feeling for myself. I have one child. I come back from a trip, and now I have to go, and this was a new piece I was doing, to form my young leaders, and there's nothing more exciting than that. Just, them coming to the club and agreeing to saying goodbye to go to my evening meeting. My daughters, I don't know, like 4 or 5. What's she said, Dad, why don't you move out here? Go home anyway. She's right. To my credit, I walked into work the next day and I said to my boss, I said, this is what happened. I can't do this retreat. I gotta rearrange my time. I gotta be there for my family. And he said, okay. Could have turned out differently. Right? So make sure you have good family help and good me time. Because pizza is the universal youth ministry food, I had to have a slide with pizza. So, takeaways. What are you thinking? What are your questions? What was helpful? What might you implement? What do you need to know more about?
I think the number 7, when you were talking about family and making sure that, knowing how the faith is being practiced in the home and what kind of dialogue they're having at home is really crucial. Because I knew when I was growing up, it wasn't something that we talked about at home. It's like you just go to church, do your thing at church, and then we wouldn't talk about it at home. So it felt really disconnected. So I think that was.
I was doing something in the Archdiocese of Cincinnati at one point, and it was with confirmation kids and their parents. And this was in the midst of all this national youth research about the importance of connecting with families. And so part of the dynamic I had that evening was parents and children had to sit and have a conversation about faith. And so of course then they come back and they do what the launch week thing. This one mom speaks up and she says, no, it was the daughter. The daughter speaks up and she says, I just learned, this is a kid who's what, 15, 16 years old. I just learned that my mom has prayer time every morning. I was a witness that she missed. Now, understandable, right? Mom's going to get up, kids are going to be asleep, whatever. Find that me time, that prayer time that was important. But there was also a piece that would speak volumes to my child. I did not learn until my mother was on her deathbed that she prayed the rosary every day. Never prayed it with us. We never learned, other than elementary school. It wasn't a practice in our household. But yes, it was so important to her, and she didn't share that part of her faith with us. So it's those kinds of things. How do we help our young people know what our spirituality is? When you're talking about families, that becomes a full parish staff conversation. Because, you hit they're hitting baptism classes, they're hitting in sacramental preparation, adult formation, whatever. They're not just hours in your ministry, right? We're catechesis. So what's the parish strategy for supporting families and helping them to grow as Catholic families? Others? Takeaways, questions, concerns? Or Brian Henderson statements also? I like this owl, so I all right. We're going to start. Did we finish 11 or 11:15?
15.
I set my timer wrong. Well, it's party time now. Or a conversation if you have things you want to chat about.
Is there any handout or booklet
pamphlets that we can share with our other catechists in our parish?
There'll be a video.
Okay. It'll be available online?
Are they gonna put it up on Capernaum, do you know?
I'm not sure where
It's typically where we're
sister's
supposed
gonna put it, but I'm pretty sure she'll email it out to everybody.
So, yeah, she asked all the presenters if they would be willing to have themselves filmed. And so the PowerPoint will be there, and I can send the PowerPoint. There's nothing in it, really, except all words on it. Yes.
When you're talking about having different type, you know, if you're in a big congregation, having the small group and the large group, and being able to offer different things to kids with different backgrounds. What if you're in a small group setting? Let's say there's 10 kids. 4 are very, very shy. 6 are talkative. We can't really split them up because then it would be 3.
That's the exact other problem. Is like, I have all these introverts and I only have this group of 10 and 12. What do I do?
And the talkers, they hijack the lesson.
Right. A couple of things you can do. Now, is your experience, did it get better through the year, or did it just never turn that corner?
The quiet kids keep showing up, but it's like an imaginary line. The ones that are interacting, they're interacting. The ones that are not even interacting amongst themselves.
Like,
But they are there. And they rarely see.
are they absorbing? I don't know.
They're not forced to be there.
Right,
They're there.
right,
But they're
But
absorbing.
they're taking it in,
Mhm,
so
but
we're
they're
still
not.
learning stuff. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that we don't need, so we need to be conscious that, okay, that's important for them. I can't always take them out of their comfort zone. So look at different strategies of maybe a partner thing rather than a group conversation. Maybe 2 of the introverts might be able to have a conversation together. So just just have to tease out a couple of different dynamics to see, what's going to engage them. Because otherwise, it's you talking and 3 kids talking, and that gets old. Again, you can use video components so that that's like engaging that you talk about.
So that's still okay. That kind of dynamic in a classroom.
As long as it's relevant, yeah. I mean, if you show them Winnie the Pooh, and it doesn't
I
matter.
felt like trying to really get something out of them, or I felt pressure of
Yeah, there's that whole sense of how do I know I succeed? I mean, that's important to us as catechists. Right? Am I getting through to them? And I would say that is end of class or beginning of class, just touching base with them. With non-confrontational questions, it kind of draws out, what are you learning? What are you excited about? So that it's not this in front of all these people. And that, again, the more you can do that in non-threatening ways, then eventually they might become more comfortable with that. Because you have respected their values.
I have something to add to that. If you have that kind of situation, like I've found that if you give them, like obviously there's the extrovert kids that like to talk and participate naturally, and then those kids who are more introverted, like it's fine if they don't participate, if you're not speaking out, but if you give them like 5 minutes at the end of the class to like have their closing thoughts like written down, then even though they didn't necessarily share it with everybody in the class, like at least as a catechist, you kind of gauge like, what did they take away from this today?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of gives the introverts or the less talkative ones that opportunity.
Right.
Yeah, to get their thoughts out.
Yeah, and that's actually, that's a strategy. I can't remember what it is.
That's part of our
Exit slip. There.
exit slip. It's part of our curriculum. It's just
So,
like exit
yeah,
slip
yeah,
after
we learned that from
class.
Dr. what's her name? So, yeah, that's great. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is helpful. Once you get a sense that did I communicate well the key points I wanted to. And then you gotta, and then if you didn't, then your work without it. Or you assess, is it because they just weren't listening? I think we always need to look at it from both sides. Because teachers, I was a teacher for 4 years and I'll never do it again. It's a full-time job. Those people have my utmost respect. My wife been doing it for 40 some odd years. But connecting to not take some ownership as the teacher that all these people did poorly on the test, they just didn't study. Well, I need to look at myself and say, where did I fall short in teaching them? And it's a two-way street.
Not that I hear them singing.
Yeah.
What do you think about, like junior high, high school kids? They're not very some like to sing, but some,
Right.
But it's such a beautiful thing that we can share.
Right.
Do other parishes involve like singing praise on Sunday, like every week basis? How do
Now, when the big parishes are doing these big, large groups, small group sessions, they're having a praise and worship band.
separate?
It's part of it, part of the session.
Like it's part of.
So typically they'll open with some praise and worship, and they'll have a talk, and then they'll have the small
Nobody
groups.
at our church like to sing.
Pardon?
Like when we have it on Sundays, we gathered all junior high and high school just for the sheer number.
Mhm.
And last year we started, okay, let's sing 2 songs, and we had them play the guitar and we passed out the songbooks. Out of like 40, maybe 3 sings the whole year. Should we be promoting it more, or should we just spare?
A couple questions I would have is, what kind of songs were they?
They were like it was like gospel songs, like Create in Me a Clean Heart, that kind of songs with guitars and.
Like Hillsong, praise and worship kind of stuff?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Parish?
St. Andrew Kin.
Oh my god.
If you had a full band, that would help.
Single, so to speak.
The guitars, like, those are my days, folk mass. It just may be that they're not ready for it.
As someone who's been at St. Andrew since I was 5 years old, I'll say that praise was not something integrated until way later.
Mhm.
And so even when I came back after college and I noticed, they're doing praise songs and everything, it was very awkward for me. I was like, this is so like not what I was used to. So I don't know if that's like, but then some of the kids that are high school now have been, right, at St. Andrew for like.
So we have a band group, and we have like the younger kids like to sing, but not the youth group people. Like the elementary school kids in our mass, because we have it all together, they're loud. But the junior high and the high school kids, barely hear them. They like to play the instrument, but they don't like to sing.
Oh, okay.
But you're not doing violin during the.
Well, and part of it can simply be the awkwardness of adolescence. They don't want to put themselves out there because they don't think they sing well.
It's a state.
It has been verified that I don't sing well. And it is a cross because I've always wanted to be able to sing well.
A lot of the Vietnamese parishes or Vietnamese communities actually have like praise and worship like bands. I'm more than happy to connect to like the one that's closest to you guys. Because I know like St. Elizabeth has one, Lodok has one, VM has one, CIW has one.
Do they meet on a regular basis and have a praise night and worship night?
So I know some bands operate as separate organizations, like they don't belong, I don't want to say belong to the Catechist, but like they operate as like an actual like a different organization or club underneath that parish. And so sometimes they're actually contracted out. So like I know one at St. Elizabeth is actually contracted out to do a lot of like the Eucharistic youth movement like events and stuff like that too. So honestly speaking, like if you guys need help, I'm more than happy to help facilitate that. Like even just to like give you guys like a jumping off point. Because I know like our band is very involved in stuff outside of our own CCE ministry.
If I can get your contact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes it's just somewhat hard one of the things I always told people when they would take people to student help, when I was in our conference, my experience with students, I was in Ohio for 40 years, so I've been there a long time. And I always felt that it was problematic. I understood why they were doing it, but that you arrive to this raucous praise and worship band, but now what you have is you have the in kids and the out kids. Because the kids who are new and never seen this before are like, I don't know what to do. I felt that way because again, it's like, no, I don't do this yet anyway. So part of it is that whole sensitivity of how do we grow people into some of this stuff, and then for some people not be their direction. My beef is, and again, I hate using praise and worship music in mass. I don't think it's appropriate. Because it doesn't focus on the movements of the mass.
I think the Archdiocese is trying to be really strict about that too.
Yeah, we're partnering with that. We're working on that with the too.
And one last question is about praise and worship. What songs are allowed to play in our church using contemporary Christian music?
That is whatever your pastor says.
Mhm.
Okay.
There is, what's the name?
Is Hillsongs recommended or what?
So
What
there
does it
is what do you know, the guy in Conroe, who's the music minister there, he has developed a Catholic worship songs for liturgy.
teach? Right.
So he's adapted some of these, but he's also, and it's been approved. If I could remember what it's called, that would be more helpful, but I don't. But the opposite worship. But and again, it's all going to be dependent upon what does Father want in our particular community.
The diocese doesn't have like a violin?
I don't think we do at this time. I wouldn't be surprised if Adam developed one. The worship director.
There's so many. We use CCLI for ours, Christ Incarnate Word. So that's a safe place to
Right.
get songs for praise and worship. We have Jesus and Me, we just jam. And we do have praise and worship, reflection, all included and mainly for our high school
Mhm.
and up. So that's what we use. And usually all the songs that are used are usually looked through by me,
Right.
or they send it,
Yeah.
so
I think
we use,
the
yeah.
one of the two places, well, actually, can be three. Big thing for me, that's my thing. The sending forth is really important to me for all the stuff that we're doing. It's about going forth. And then people will plug in these me and Jesus sad songs to process out of church. No! This is joy. This is celebrate. This is bring the gospel out to the world. Amen. You need to go bring the gospel out to the world. Thanks, y'all.